welcome to another edition of the Gooner Ramble. Joining you with Callum today.
Hello, mate. You alright?
Just fine. And we also have Clive with us.
Good evening. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. I was an emergency host. Giles had to drop out. We think he's sitting alone in his bedroom, curled up in a fetal position, sucking his thumb right now. For those not paying attention on Twitter, his old account got banned for posting vines of goals. So anybody that was following Giza the Rambler, his new Twitter handle is @GoonerManN5. So give him a shout, cheer him up a little bit. He's down in the dumps. Say hello.
I wouldn't feel too bad for him. I mean, he's already got 100 more followers than me in 24 hours.
Oh, really?
So, yeah, I don't feel an awful lot of sympathy for him, I have to say.
Oh, he's out there pimping himself, you know. So anyway, we've had two games, two disappointing draws since we've last potted. So let's go ahead and talk about the Liverpool game a little bit. A game that we were 3-2 up and ended up walking away with a 3-3 draw. Some people thought it was deserved. Some people were extremely disappointed. Not sure where I fall in that camp, but Callum, let's start with you. Your thoughts on the Liverpool game?
I think, yeah, the feeling you take away from it is disappointment, and I think that's always going to be the case, no matter who you're against or how the game unfolds. If you're a goal up as you're approaching the 90th minute and you don't win the game, you're going to be disappointed. I mean, obviously last year we conceded a goal in the 97th minute, I think, when Skirtle equalised in the same fixture. So it was a real sense of, we've thrown away two vital points, and I think in isolation a point at Anfield is never a bad result. I think irrespective of their injuries they've got, of the form they're in, Liverpool, especially this version of their team with Klopp in charge, they seem to raise their games for the big matches, as they showed with great results against City and Chelsea in the last few weeks and months. So I never thought it was going to be an easy game. I actually thought we responded really well, having come from behind twice and to take the lead. I thought we deserved it at the time, and played a lot better than we did last year in the same fixture. And I think after the game, you're always going to be gutted when you've conceded a goal that late on. But there was so inevitably disappointing, but upon reflection, perhaps wasn't the worst result in the world. Although it would have been awesome for our season to have got that win. It would have felt really, really important to pick up that big away victory.
Absolutely.
Very similar to what we did against City last year at the Etihad. That would have been, I think, a very similar sort of bounce for us to have gone to a big rival's ground and picked up the 3 points. But you have to say on the night, 3-3, a draw was probably a fair result.
Perhaps. I know with their injuries, we're all hoping to get a big win. What did you think, Clive?
I know that before the game, I was very, very nervous about this game. I don't know why. I'm normally pretty cool, but I was really, really nervous, right? And because I just thought it was going to be a seminal moment. And we started off, and Liverpool are sort of a club really, sort of driven by emotion, and they tap into emotion. They tap into that connection with the crowd and the manager, and it really cheeses me off the way they do things, right? And I thought the extra cup.
There's a smugness there, isn't there?
I don't like it, right? And so they're the only team with fans. They're the only team with knowledgeable fans, and it does my head in, right? So basically, before the game, I was thinking they've got the Exeter game, and they had the Exeter game in the Capital One Cup. I thought they might be a bit dishevelled, but in some ways, the Exeter game allowed them to rest their complete team. And they came into the game with a team that had been sitting on the settee for a week. The injuries suddenly came back, and they turned up pretty motivated and sort of blew us away. I was looking at the game, and I always tend to look at how we play. And it was a very exciting game for the neutral, but I didn't enjoy how we played. I didn't enjoy the basketball nature of the game, and it was pretty traumatic to watch, right? So we scored.
You're right, they were very lively.
We
pressing us very hard.
We were hanging on, we were hanging in, and then but then we scored from our first attack, and then they got a good second goal. But then we scored again, and I felt we hushed their crowd a little bit. Obviously, I was a City watcher, but I thought at some points we're getting combinations going. They were very quiet, and they realised how brittle they were to our attacking. And I felt that we could have been a little bit more efficient. I think Wenger pointed it out. At 3-2, they were there. They were done. And we didn't quite execute on the break. And then we made this decision to drop in. And this is where I felt we got it wrong. Well, if we're going to drop in, I felt our substitution should have been different. It's okay. If you're going to do that, then you have to make sure you react to their substitutions. And they brought on Stephen Corker, they brought on Benteke, and we brought on Gibbs, Oxlade-Chamberlain and Arteta, and I thought that was wrong. We should have put on Gabriel or Chambers to combat the extra height. And those small details ended up being really, really important. So, the result was fair from a neutral perspective, but there's not many neutrals on this podcast, right? So,
no, not at all.
So,
you were gutted, right?
Yeah, I was a little bit gutted, and I think sometimes you can only control what you can control, and I thought we could have helped out potentially with the substitutions. A lively game. I thought we were better than them. I don't care. They had their moment in the first 20, but I felt we were in control, and we let them in, and they nicked a goal, right? And so 3-3, not the end of the world. But I just a few little regrets there about some of our decisions, especially around substitutions.
Yeah, and you're right. We also wasted some opportunities there in the second half as well.
It did feel like once we had the goal though that we kind of set out with 20 minutes on the clock to go, and kind of said, right, we're going to defend.
That's okay.
But no, I think to a degree, Clive. But I think when you're saying to the opposition team, well, you know, we're going to sit back now and we're going to just try and deal with what you're going to throw at us. All it takes is a deflection or a bit of magic, or Joe Allen coming off the bench and scoring a volley that he'll never score again. That these things can happen when you offer that much up. But I do think whilst the substitutions probably could have been better, I do think that whilst a lot of people made a lot about Liverpool's injuries, I think we looked very tired, and as Clive said, it was like a basketball game, back and forth, and I don't think that worked in our favour. We obviously were able to respond quickly with the goals, but because we allowed the game to be full of energy, very high tempo, very up and down, I think by the time we took the lead, and with 20 minutes to go, we were just knackered. And I think this is, you look at the players in that team, and I think these are players that have been, I wouldn't say run into the ground, but they've been used heavily over the last few weeks and months, given the amount of injuries we'd had. And, you look at Ozil, for example, who came off with 5 minutes to go. Some people were sort of saying, once he came off, we had no chance of keeping the ball. But if you look at it honestly, the 15 minutes before he was withdrawn, he wasn't able to do anything. He wasn't able to keep the ball. And I think more than anything, that was down to, fatigue. And so, the way I looked at it was that the last 20 minutes, I do think that we did kind of decide, right, we're going to sit back and defend. But I thought more of it was because we knew that if we tried to push on too much, we wouldn't be able to get back and we'd leave ourselves open. So I think, by the end, we had no choice really but to defend deep and hope for the best. And it very nearly worked out for us.
What I was trying to say, right, it's okay to do that. But then when you do that, you've got to bring on the right personnel to enable you to do that. Mm-hmm. So if Liverpool bring on two guys who are strong in the air, we've got to bring on an extra centre-half to deal with that, right? If they're bringing on Stephen Corker to play centre-forward, you have to react to that. You don't bring on Mikel Arteta to sit in front of him, right? So it's these small details, and it is noted yesterday, against Stoke, Chambers was brought on late. Right? And I thought that was a lesson that he'd learned, right? Bring on the more physical guy to stop them when they sling the ball in the last 10. It's just small details, right? If he had his time again, I guarantee Chambers or Gabriel would have come on. He would have made Arteta as a substitution. That's all I was saying, really.
I agree with you, Clive. I think you can definitely make a case that they weren't the right substitutions. I just think that by the way that we set out about the game and we allowed ourselves to play Liverpool's game, really, which was like a high-octane back and forth match, we kind of put ourselves in a position where we were so tired for that last 20 minutes that we had no choice but to defend. And you were absolutely right. We could have done better with the substitutions, and especially when Corker came on, because inevitably their goal comes from a Benteke header. Two big front men up, the knockdown to Allen. But I do think that whilst the substitutions were vital and weren't the correct ones, I do think that our entire approach to the game was disappointing, and the way we played that first 60, 70 minutes left us in a position where we could only really do one thing in that last 20, and as I said, nearly worked out. But as Clive said, small details. You could make a case that
small details. It happens, right? It happens. We were a bit dashing in midfield, and we were a little bit. Our distances were very big. We were very open. It's almost like 5 up, 5 back, almost. That's what it felt like, and a big gap in the middle. And you get basketball games like that, and I don't like that. But to the guys that follow me on Twitter, they know what I think about our centre mids. So, it's quite interesting differences between the centre mids between Liverpool and Stoke. But I'm sure we'll get onto that later.
Yeah, we absolutely will. As a matter of fact, let's just do that right now. Let's just dive right into Stoke. Clive, start us off.
Stoke. Obviously, in England, woke up, snow, thinking, oh, great, right? Stoke away. It's the coldest ground in the world, and it's snowing. But actually, at Stoke, one of the worst things, I've been there, one of the worst things is how windy it is. It's a very exposed ground, and sometimes when you get snow, the wind isn't so bad, right? 'Cause it dies for a while. So I was actually quite encouraged, and I thought if it wasn't going to be like that, we got a chance. I'm looking at everything really for our favour. And even before the game, if you watched it on TV, the players that really pumped, and I was really, really impressed. I was more impressed with the Stoke game than I was the Liverpool game, because of our shape and our compactness and our sort of solidarity. Really, I felt that the whole team was on the same page. Right, I thought the midfield shape was much better. Against Liverpool, we had the 4-2-3-1 with Flamini sitting 50 yards away from Ramsey, and the big gaps in the middle. But against Stoke, we almost played like a 4-3-3. We had 3 narrow, so we had Flamini with Oxlade-Chamberlain just tucked into his right, and Ramsey tucked into his left. And that allowed Ramsey to do what he can do really well, which is run. Break into space, really caused problems. He pressed, he tracked, he tackled. And I thought he was much better against Stoke until he ran out of energy than he was against Liverpool. Oxlade-Chamberlain on our right-hand side is going to split people's views. Some people thought he'd done well, some people didn't. I just read an article from Amy Lawrence saying that his performance was encouraging. In that role, I thought his performance was, encouraging, if not 100% precise. But I felt he showed a lot of courage to come and get the ball, a lot of bravery on the ball, and a lot of bravery to try risky passes, right, even though his confidence is not high. So from my angle, I always tend to look at someone's intent to play. What are they trying to do? Are they trying to do something for the team, or are they trying to do something for themselves, right? I looked at him and I thought, you're trying to do something for the team. It's not working out for you at the moment, but you're not hiding. You're trying. You're trying to manipulate the ball. You're trying to move the ball. It's not going for you and people are on you, but the real test of character is how you react to that, right? And I thought he never hid, and I thought he'd done pretty well. And it was a sign that potentially his form can come back in the future. So I look at the 2 games, not on the win. Well, I'm sure we're going to go on about Stoke, but I was happier with the shape, with the attitude, with the solidarity. I was really happy with the collective spirit, because there's been times we've gone to Stoke and I felt pretty ashamed, to be honest. I think we haven't behaved like Arsenal Football Club. We've just turned up and just given up, not performed. It's quite embarrassing that Stoke almost tell us what they're going to do to us, then they actually do it. When you compare our clubs and our size and our resources and the level of football that we play, mostly, then when we go to Stoke, we turn into a dog and duck, and I just don't get it, right? So it was really encouraging to see how our attitude and how we performed, and I thought it was a much better point at Stoke than it was at Liverpool.
And I think Stoke is a whole lot improved. At least the way they play the game has changed dramatically since Tony Pulis was there. They got some some players that actually play football.
Well, they did kind of revert to the old a bit, didn't they? They made a special case for us.
Yes,
I thought it was quite
yeah.
interesting. But no, it's difficult to argue with anything Clive is saying. And I actually said before the game, when Özil was announced to have not travelled with the squad, that it might almost be a blessing in disguise, because without him in the team, I think Wenger was almost forced to play more conservatively, and Clive's spoken about that three in the middle, and I think that was vital to the way we played, and we really made the most of what we had in the team. We had no Özil, we had no Cazorla, no Wilshere, no Alexis Sanchez. It was a team devoid of creativity, really, or at least devoid of our most creative players. So it was good to see us, as Clive said, we equipped ourselves in a way that was befitting of the club, and a way that we haven't done in years gone by. And of course, having drawn with Liverpool, this game felt like we needed to win it. But we're all desperate to see us win at that stadium. But I think, given the players we had out, and given the run of form we've been on, and the tough fixtures we've had and got coming up, it felt good to get through that game with our pride intact, a point on the board, and at the end of the day, it took us back to the top of the table. So it was, disappointing, I suppose, not to pick up a win in either of these two games. But I think we all, the things that have happened at that stadium in the years gone by, the embarrassment that happened there last season, with that very fresh in the mind still, the result doesn't look that bad. And, whilst the win would have felt really affirming, a loss would have been pretty catastrophic. So it was great to hold on, I think.
Yeah, and thank God for Petr Cech, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was a big part of it. I think in these games, Szczesny or Ospina, you would never quite feel so confident with, the wind and the atmosphere. You would have thought, you would never have been truly confident. And I think, what Stoke are good at is that they are good at unsettling our team. Lesser characters can be rattled. And I think it was, with someone like Cech, he's been there and done it everywhere. Nothing will intimidate him. And as a result, I think he played with a real assurance that spread throughout the defence. I think if you've got a dodgy keeper, then the whole defence becomes a bit on edge. And his performance, on his own was fantastic, with some great saves. But I think a big part of why we looked pretty solid for the most part at the back was because Cech was kind of showing off a certain confidence that we've perhaps lacked in years gone by. And games like this are where he's worth every penny we paid for him.
Yeah, absolutely. I thought he was man of the match.
Definitely.
Actually,
Him and Butland, undisputably.
Yeah.
Remember last year we went to Stoke with Martinez in goal, and we had Callum Chambers as centre half, and he was 19 at the time.
Mm.
And they played Peter Crouch and John Waters and just smashed him to bits, right? So,
Yeah.
And this year we've gone there with Koscielny, Mertesacker and Peter Cech, and we looked better, and with a narrow midfield. I do think yesterday was quite significant, right? So I'm going to say something now, right? It's going to shock a few people, but I think what we achieved yesterday with that formation could be really important for the rest of the season, right? So that 4-3-3, the first time Wenger did it with the Oxlade-Chamberlain to the right and Iwobi to the left of Chambers was versus Sunderland in the Cup. And I thought we were excellent in the home game. I thought we were very, very transitional, very quick, very aggressive, very pacey. And I thought it was interesting in that game, and we really smashed Sunderland. Yesterday, it didn't look as smooth, and I often think that when you hit January, football turns from a game of what I call flow to a game of like moments. The flow is harder to find when you're under more pressure, and 3 points after a turn of the year are bigger than 3 points before it, right? So, after a team of flow, and when they flow, it's beautiful. But what happens when we're not flowing? We have to find another way. And what's encouraging about this group, they've got a number of ways to play that they can revert to. So if it's not flowing, we can go to his 4-3-3 and we can grind out results. We can go to the Giroud centre forward. We can go to the quick Walcott Sanchez left rotational game. We can with Ramsey touching on the right. We can go back to our normal middle three with Coquelin, Cazorla and Ozil. We've just got different ways of playing now. And I think between now and the end of the season, we're going to need them all. And we're going to need to know them when we revert to them. And they're going to have to work. And sometimes it's going to be ugly and sometimes it's going to work really well. But I'm really encouraged by that, to go to Stoke, a place with no Sanchez, no Ozil, no Cazorla, no building through the thirds really, and then to come out of there with an even result and look good in patches. And if Giroud had scored, we'd have won that game. I'm really encouraged. I'm really encouraged by what we did yesterday and how we can utilise the full depth of our squad with that formation. I think it's really interesting. If you imagine Jack in that formation, right? If you imagine Welbeck on the left up front in that formation, we've become very aggressive, very transitional. We've got the players in the squad, and you have a defined role for your DM per se. And I liked it. I really liked it, and I think it's going to be an interesting change of formation. Not saying do it every week, but the fact we can turn to it, I think it's going to be interesting.
It's a really interesting point, and I think, without wanting to harp on about injuries, it almost does feel like we're fighting with kind of one arm behind our back, and I felt that against Liverpool and against Stoke. I mean, the Liverpool game, it's kind of difficult to look at the injuries and who we didn't have available, because obviously Liverpool did, but obviously if we had, Alexis, Coquelin, Cazorla, in that team, we look hell of a lot stronger, we look hell of a lot more capable of controlling a game. And the ping pong match we had with Liverpool would have been less likely to happen had we had that control in the team. Yeah. And this entire period, I've seen a lot of people who seem to say that we've blown the title because we haven't given ourselves a buffer over Manchester City.
I think we're winning the title. I think we're actually winning it right now.
I think you could be right, because I think if you look, people often take the piss about the whole like a new signing phrase. But we, throughout the season, we've been without Welbeck, Wilshere, Rosicky. I mean, they literally have not played a minute of football between them since May. These are three players that we have had to go the whole season without having. And when they all come back, whether you rate them as first-team regulars or not, a lot of people don't, but they have something to offer, all of them. And these are three players that generally are going to be, like, in the context of this season, new signings. There's Coquelin, who has been out for some weeks now, who is integral to the way we play. Alexis as well. So for me, it's kind of felt like the whole Christmas period and the period we're in now is almost shepherding our way through, fighting with one arm behind our back, adapting to our circumstances, which is that the majority of our attacking part of the team is injured or, in and out of the team. And, we're being stretched, and that means that even the best players that are fit, your Özils and your Girouds, the really key players for us, they've been overworked to a degree. And I do think that perhaps Özil's injury this week was one perhaps he could have played through, but given the game, given the big fixtures we've got coming up, he could have been given a rest, perhaps. So I do think that, for me, that, like Clive, there is a lot of optimism there, because I do feel like, even for next weekend, we should have Özil back, and we have El Neni's another body. We don't know quite what he's going to offer, but hopefully it'll be something significant. Rosicky's back in training, could be back, and Alexis should be back next week. So that's suddenly three players we've not had for a while, or not had at all, coming into the team, into the squad. Özil back as well. And then in the weeks to follow, hopefully we'll have Welbeck and Wilshere and Coquelin back within a few weeks, and Cazorla looks unlikely to be back for some time, but still. So for me, I think what is vital is that we stay within touching distance in City. I do feel like for some people, if we were to, for example, draw with Chelsea next weekend and City were to win, we weren't a point behind them, people would begin to think, right, this is City, we've lost the lead, we're in trouble. But I think that we're going to put a run together in the weeks and months to come as we get more bodies back, as we learn to play again with our full strength team. And as Clive said, this period where we've struggled, I say struggled, but we've had to play a different way. could become beneficial. You know, in a similar to way, if you look at one player, Monreal, when he had to play centre half last season, he struggled a bit, but he learnt to play in a different way. And when he went back to the norm, he went back to left back, he played so much better. And a lot of people have said that's because of that time he spent as centre half. If you apply that to the whole team, we've had to adapt, we've had to play a different way because of our injuries. And when everyone comes back, you'd hope that we're going to be better for it, with more competition and having got through that period, you know.
So you guys are a whole lot less disappointed than I thought you would be.
Well, no, look, this is. I mean, it's always nice speaking to Clive because he puts things in great perspective. So I do enjoy. Because last time I think one of the last times we spoke was after the Spurs game, which was disappointing, but we got a point and it didn't feel too bad. But I just think that in the context of the season, it's going to come down to us or City, and we're in a position where we're above them by a point. And you look at the games we've got through with the squad we have available. I feel pretty good at our chances, given the players we have to come back, and given the way we have played at times this season. So,
okay. Well, I was expecting at least 4 points out of this week, but I didn't get them. So
this week in isolation, I do feel disappointed that we've only got 2 points. But at the same time, in the context of the season, we're a point ahead of City. We're top of the league, with 18 games to play and a lot of players to return. So it could be a hell of a lot worse.
Yeah. Clive, you had something?
Yeah, I was just going to say that there's a pressure being put upon Arsenal followers, right? So every single person tells you, oh, we've got to win the league this year because Chelsea not doing so well, and City going to get a new manager, they're going to be better, Liverpool going to be better, Man United can't be as bad. It's got to be Arsenal. And I think that pressure that we keep hearing subconsciously is making us think differently about the players that are in front of us. So it's making some people be a little bit hypercritical and not look at the season holistically, right? And say, well, actually, we're 10 points better off than we were this time last season. We're top of the league. We're doing that without injuries. And that's 6 weeks ago, we were a one-man team with Alexis Sanchez. Well, he hasn't played for 6 weeks, right? We've only lost one game in that period. So I look at it slightly differently and think about what's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 months. And we're going to be a lot stronger. Getting through yesterday, I mean, I was listening to Robbie on the TV today, and he was sort of saying, Ramsey was hanging, he had his hands on his knees. It's the sort of thing you pick up when you're in the ground. And that guy's ran himself into the ground, and I do criticise him, as you guys know, but you can't criticise his effort, right? He's put everything in, especially yesterday at Stoke. And it would have been nice to bring some power off the bench. And when we were thinking about the bench, we had no power to take that game out of our box. And we were bringing on a young kid who did well in the Iwobi. But if you're bringing on Danny Welbeck, or you're bringing on Jack Wilshere, or this is completely different, right? You're bringing on someone who can transition up the pitch, who can completely make them step back. Theo Walcott wouldn't have been as tired as he was yesterday. He would have been fresher. He would have been more dynamic, quicker. He wouldn't spend half a day at left back. So there's a knock-on effect to these injuries, and we saw it in the last 20 at Liverpool. We saw it a little bit yesterday in periods. But then you look at someone like Giroud, I looked at Giroud and Bellerin yesterday, and I just could not get over the stamina and work rate of Giroud. I just thought he was tremendous, defending, fighting. He had a man-to-match performance at Liverpool, and he followed it up again against Stoke. Could have been a hero quite easily, but his work rate was massive. And then you look at Bellerin, right? He's a 20-year-old kid. He's seen off Arnautovic, who was strong and he was acting as a target. He's gone off, and they bring on Diouf, tall, quick, a man-type African player running at him. And what does Bellerin do? He pushes him all the way back down the pitch. And Diouf spent the whole game tracking him. And Diouf spent, he was the left back. I'm thinking, what personality for a 20-year-old to show, right, away at Stoke. Probably his first time he's played there. So things like that massively encourage me about where we're going to end up. So yeah, I tried to look at it slightly differently. I am incredibly encouraged by where we are at the moment. Of course, we need to beat Chelsea, right? We need to beat them. We all know that, right? There's no denying that. We've got 9 home games, 7 away games. We need to win our home games, right? So, if we lose to Chelsea, then let's have a different chat, should we?
Yeah. Yeah. Now, I do want to talk about some of the players and how they're performing during this period, and we'll just touch on we'll start up top, touch on it briefly. You just mentioned you were very encouraged by Giroud's effort. He's giving it all. He's got to put it out there, but you said if he'd have finished his chance, we could have won.
Yeah.
And I think that's the criticism a lot of people levy. But then reports today that Arsene says, "Oh, I'm not going to go buy a striker in January. I can't find anybody better than Giroud."
I don't think he can.
Yeah. So Clive, you were talking about Giroud. Do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, I'll tell you what. We all do it, right? We all pick our favourite Arsenal teams, and we all pick if we had European Cup final team tomorrow and everyone was fit, who would it be? What I do, I'm walking down the street, right? Maybe I'm just wicked. There was silence there from you two, right? So,
when I play Football Manager, I conduct press conferences in my head. So honestly, it's not strange at all.
So and in my number one Arsenal team, right, Theo Walcott plays centre forward and Alexis Sanchez plays left, and because I think the levels we reach are the highest when them two are playing together. But Giroud is forcing me to think about this again, right? I think he's got 9 in 9, but what he gives to the team, if you're gonna put a team out for your life, I think I can guarantee a performance from Giroud more so than I can Walcott, right? So even though the levels I think that we play at when we're like we did against Manchester United at home and Villa in the cup final, that level of performance is incredibly high. It's probably the highest I've seen from a technical perspective and accuracy perspective. And I love seeing Arsenal that way. But if you're playing a game for your life, I'm starting to think we can trust Giroud more. And and he's delivering, right? And he's delivering in both ends of the pitch. And I think that's real testimony to his character. And he's had some dips this year, but I think he's really performing well. And right now, he's our form player, and he's carrying us offensively when others are falling away, right? And not showing. And I tweeted before the game, right? I'm going to say something a bit controversial. Now you got me going, right? So we've got our star players are out, right? So if you look at Arsenal from 30,000 feet, the 3 star players we have, Sanchez, Cazorla, and Ozil, right? They're the star boys, and they're the ones that carry us. Cazorla, most touches, most passes. I think he may still have it, even though he hasn't played for like 6 weeks. And Sanchez and Ozil speak for themselves. And I've often felt within our sort of club, we have these group of British players who manage to sort of have strong wages, and when they go for contract talks, they seem to get their money, and we all want them to develop. But I felt yesterday was an opportunity versus Stoke for those British players to really lead us, right? And it didn't quite happen, but it is something that I'm looking at. We have a lot of sort of Brit/English players that make their money playing for top clubs, but they don't have to lead top clubs. And these guys have been there. Walcott's been there for 10 years, and I'm still not sure I trust him to get a 7 out of 10 every game, although he's trying very, very hard, right? So Oxlade-Chamberlain's been there for 6 years. He's a young kid, right? He's still 22. Ramsey, he's probably the most further forward to his development. Jack, through injuries, not quite done it. Welbeck's new. Gibbs has fallen away. And I do think, Chambers is new. Jenkinson's, West Ham are going to send him back at the end of the season. And I look at this group of players and I think, you've got the opportunity to play for Arsenal, and it's time for you not to just say, I'm playing for Arsenal. But on days like yesterday, you have to lead Arsenal, and deliver on the talent that you have. And I think that's the next phase for this group. And I'm not picking anybody. I want to see it happen, right? But I think sometimes we need to give a little bit more accountability from these guys, because I said a little tweet out yesterday. Walcott's quick to negotiate 140 grand a week, but maybe not so quick to show for the ball. Right? There's a bit of a comment, bit of a joke. but there's a bit of a truth in that in my mind. I want him to show a little bit more when he's on the pitch. But he'll come again. He's had a little dip, and to be fair, he's playing the position covering for Alexis Sanchez, and he's done over the sort of 8-9 games. He's done pretty well.
Yeah. Okay, Callum, you want to talk about Giroud Walcott before I chime in with my thoughts?
Well, I think a lot of people giving Giroud stick against Stoke have pretty short memories, because against Liverpool he was fantastic. I know he missed that sitter, but he responded with a goal out of nothing, a real goal of quality that really we should have won the game with. And I do think this season he's a lot of people have been critical of him, and he will always be to some extent in the shadow of Thierry Henry and Robin van Persie and Ian Wright, these amazing strikers that we've been lucky enough to have at the club over the last 20 years. But he's making a legacy for himself, I think, and it's a legacy that a lot of people haven't wanted to get on board with, or have resisted. But I think he's getting to the point where it's becoming harder and harder to ignore him. He's hit 18 goals this season. He's scoring in the big games. He's scoring against good teams. He's scoring really good quality goals, and he's improving. And Clive is right about his attitude. Against Stoke, he was isolated for a lot of it. He had Shawcross breathing down his neck the whole match. And without Özil there, he had very little creativity behind him that was going to help him, but he doesn't get deterred by it. So many strikers, when they're cut off from the rest of the team to that extent, can go missing. And Giroud gets involved, and I think, unfortunately for him, that means that he's often, surrounded by defenders. He's often penalised harshly from referees for, daring to put his hand on a defender, and that can sometimes reflect badly on him, because people say, oh look, he's losing the ball, he's this and that, but he's battling. Some players, and Walcott is probably a good example of that, can go missing from matches, and from Giroud, you're going to get a committed display, and I do think that going forward he's come to be our number one. I would like Walcott to get some games there, just so Giroud can get a rest, really. And I know when we signed Giroud, I was none too excited, but he's grown on me. He's worked hard. He's improved season over season. Mm-hmm. It's hard to deny that. But I think you're right. He's suffering by comparison, because we have a generation of Ian Wright to Dennis Bergkamp to Thierry Henry to Van Persie, and we expect some world beater up front, and we just don't quite have one right now. But we sometimes forget he's still very good. He has his moments of, like Giroud the other night against Liverpool, missing that open goal. I mean, you just think it had to be him. He just does that from time to time. He'll have those moments of madness. He'll get sent off against, had a couple of sendings off, really silly ones. Oh, against Dinamo, wasn't it, earlier in the season? He'll have that game against Monaco where he misses everything. But the thing I like the most about him is that he responds, and that was the perfect example of the Liverpool game. He missed that chance. He would know the stick he would get. He knows the amount of criticism that would come his way after that. But he keeps going, and he scores a goal of immense quality. And that's what I like about him more than anything else. It's not only that he's able to do that, but he's able to do that 20 minutes after missing an unbelievably easy chance. So I do think that with Giroud, he embodies a lot that is about this team. And, there is a lot about this team to bemoan, but there's also a lot of it that is to admire, and I think that's summed up with Giroud. He's a player that has his flaws, but through character and determination, he's getting better and better and delivering on a more consistent level. So, and that's probably something that I think Walcott maybe doesn't have, someone that I think looks bad in comparison, because there are questions about his attitude, and even Clive spoke about the English guys. Gibbs and Oxlade-Chamberlain, for example, are two examples of players that, yes, they haven't developed to the level we want them to, but you cannot question their commitment. Gibbs, rarely plays more than 20 minutes at a time, and that's out of position, but you never hear him complain. And when he plays, he does give his all. Oxlade-Chamberlain is clearly having a bit of a poor time of it at the moment, but at the weekend he was trying things constantly. Even when he was making bad passes, he was constantly picking the ball up. He was showing for the ball. He was trying to make things happen, and I think there's something that shouldn't be underestimated. And even if our English lot aren't the first names in the team sheet, we do need players like that who can come in, do a job, and be really committed to the cause. And I think that sort of attitude spreads throughout the squad, and that shouldn't be underestimated.
Yeah, and one of the things I've noticed about Theo, and like Clive, I'm a big fan of Theo. I think I'd like to start him up top more often than he gets starts up there. But one of the things I noticed, and I've noticed this for many seasons now, and referees just are not calling the level of obstruction that defenders are throwing in front of Theo when he tries to make a run.
Yeah,
it rarely ever gets called, and he just gets bounced around when people they step in front of his run just because they know they can't catch him. They get away with it, so they keep doing it, and Theo hasn't found a way to fight through it.
That's a great point, Rick. Sorry to jump you, mate, but I think it's a great point. I think yesterday everyone goes, it wasn't a physical game because there was no bookings. Well, I'm actually thinking, you know why there's no bookings? Because the referee allowed them to tactically foul against us when we were trying to break. Yeah. And I thought Theo suffered for that a lot. He was pushing it around, people getting blocked off, and they weren't getting booked. So they would do it again. Right. And sometimes you got to book someone. You have to send them off. But you got to book someone to send the other team the message. Say, you can't do that, right? The Arsenal are set up for counter-attack, they're set up for transition, and you're fouling them early in the move. I've got to make a statement. I've got to book someone. And, when you referee a game, it's about game management. And I felt he didn't book anybody, and there was enough there to say, you guys are affecting the pattern of this game, and you're killing people like Walker on the break, right? So that's a good point. I think I'm not criticising. I want to clarify this, right? I'm not criticising the English group. I just do think the next step of their development is to not just play for Arsenal, but be an Arsenal leader, right? So we talk about Giroud, we talk about Cech, we talk about Sanchez, Coquelin. These guys are sort of on the pitch leaders, Mertesacker. I want an English player in there. I want a British player in there to say, I'm one of the leading group now. I'm not prepared to be a support actor. I want to be Tom Cruise, right? I want to lead this team, right? So, and that's the next step. And that's what you got to say. If you're a player, you got to say, well, you know what? I want Mesut Ozil's money, but I want to earn it by what I do, not by the fact I'm English and I've got a premium against me. Do you see what I mean? Mm-hmm. And I think that's the next step for those players, if they want to get to the top in the game, is to not be satisfied to play for Arsenal, but to lead Arsenal, right? And yesterday was a chance, and there'll be many more chances in the future because they've got many years on their side, and I want them to do it, right? So there's no criticism. I just want them to do it.
Okay, so let's talk about the one that drew I think the loudest groans from from the viewing audience I was watching the game with, and that was Alex Oxlade-Chamberlain. Just seems to be having a rough go of it. You've both said you appreciate his endeavor, you appreciate the fact that he's trying to do something. He's not necessarily being selfish. It's just not coming off for him. But how long have we been saying that?
Well, no, I just think that there's a. I tweeted Clive before the game the other day and said, why is, people were bemoaning his inclusion before the game, and I was kind of made the point that at the moment he is the scapegoat people are going to, and over the years there's always seemed to be one player that at any given time that the players are on, the fans tend to be on the back of, look, he's not having the best of times, obviously Chamberlain, but you have to get, the context of the game. He's playing out of position. He knows he's out of form. You can't ignore that sort of thing. He's playing in a position he's not comfortable with in a team where we're lacking a lot of our best players. So he is required to do a pretty big job. And look, in that kind of environment, that kind of game, did you expect his passing to be particularly brilliant? No, not at all. He's not that sort of player. He's the sort of player that will take chances and will try and make things happen. And I think for the most part he did that. And I think there was a lot of his game that was really underrated. I thought when Ramsey was bombing on, he did a good job of slotting in next to Flamini to make sure we had that shape in the middle. And, for every time that he made a bad pass or lost the ball, he chased it back. There was one occasion where he lost the ball when he should have, there was an easier pass he had on, and he worked and he ran, he won it back. I think we've got to throw something out of it. And it's just the little things like that perhaps go amiss. Whereas the way he's playing at the moment, the scrutiny that's on him means that every misplaced pass, every dribble that doesn't quite stay in will be jumped upon by people, will be heightened in a way that it isn't with other players. And I just think that, yes, you could look at him and say he hasn't developed to the level that we'd like him to. He won't perhaps become this fantastic player that we thought we had a few years ago, but he is still very young. He still has a lot of quality, and I just think that, like all players, he's having a bit of bad form at the moment, and that doesn't mean that all the things we like about him or have liked about him are no longer true. It doesn't mean that he's never going to make it at the club. I just think that people sometimes lose perspective, and when a player gets into this sort of form and the fans get on his back, it can become something really quite nasty and something that's often exaggerated.
Yeah, so I guess I got two things, and then we'll let Clive talk about Alex. I don't know that he has a position right now. So when you say playing him out of position, I don't know if that's true, because I don't know that he has a position.
Well, I don't think.
And two, I think you're talking about, will he come good? I still hope he will. He's got talent there, but playing the way he is, and the people we have coming back from injury, how much game time is he really going to get once those players are back? Is a question I have. But Clive, what are your thoughts on Oxlade-Chamberlain?
Right, I got loads of thoughts on him. I'm not as hard on him as other people are, because he's 22. If he is 26 and we're still talking this way, I'd have a different opinion, right? So I think, I think he shows a lot of bravery, right? So there were times yesterday when our defenders had the ball, and when they were looking for a man to pass to, Ramsey's natural game is to run away. So if you're a defender, you see his backside. But that's okay, because he's looking for that breaking ball into space, right? You've got Flamini, who's not really comfortable receiving the ball with no wing mirrors, I call it. He doesn't scan. He doesn't like receiving the ball unless he's on the full turn. He doesn't like it on a half turn in case he gets pressed and he can lose it. So he doesn't make good support lines. And so we were so dependent on Oxlade-Chamberlain to come to the ball and flick it round the corner, do a dribble, surge out of trouble. And I felt, if I'm looking at him, if I'm Wenger looking at him, I'm thinking, okay, I've trusted you to start. He had a stinker when he came on against Liverpool. He got caught on the break a couple of times. And I've now started you in a position that's perfect for you, tucked in on the right in the midfield three. And I thought it was a huge bit of trust by the manager. And I thought he did okay. But of course now, people have got it in their heads that he's not a good player. And so people are rating him 5 out of 10 and things like that. And I'm thinking, look at this properly, right? This is someone who's fighting for their form. And he's doing the basics of the job correctly. His execution may not be coming off, but that all the time, as much as we'd like. That does not make him a bad player. We had 3 shots yesterday, or 3 attempts on target, and he had one, right, that he made himself. And Giroud had the others with a header and the shot. That was it, 3 attempts. No one else threatened the goal at all. Right, so, and yet he was a big part of our build-up, play from deep. I thought yesterday was really encouraging from him. I thought he did quite well against Bournemouth. He's only played 3 games in a row from the start, once this season, and that was just recently after Christmas. So he hasn't had that run. So I am less critical of him, because he needs that run. But he may not get it for a short period of time. But like I say, I'm not worried about it. We're now developing different ways of playing that he can contribute in. And that's why I was really encouraged yesterday. But not only him, I think that formation suits Ramsey, I think it suits Jack, I think it suits many players. And it shows that Arsenal can find another way to play without Mesut Ozil, because it wouldn't be too long. His form was so good that all people would do is just mark him, and then where would we go? So we found another way to play, which is really encouraging, I said earlier.
Okay. Let's take a few viewer questions here before we talk about Chelsea. One of them, we had 2 different people, I think, tweet pretty much the same question. One was Waz the Gooner, and the other is, where did it go? Gunner's Games. Both talking about the fact that we're playing wingers on their weak side, meaning Walcott's playing on the left, Campbell, who's a left-footed player, is playing on the right. They don't think that's right. I know Aaron at the Gateway Gooners is always on about it. Why is Campbell on the right? Put him on the left. But what are your guys' thoughts on? And we'll start with Callum on putting the wingers on their off foot and letting them try and cut in, I guess, rather than put in crosses.
I think it's not. I feel largely, as a concept, as a general formation, part of that. I'm not inherently against it, but I do think that with Walcott, the weekend, he was out of form, so that meant that every time that he got the ball on the left-hand side, he inevitably was going to cut in on his right. And when Walcott's out of form, he becomes a very predictable player. He's never been one to be able to beat players with his feet. He needs that space in behind to really exploit his pace. So when I was watching him yesterday at the weekend, I kept thinking, just put him on the right, just switch him back over. And I know that the goal he got against City, where he cut in and shot in, was something that could only have happened from him playing off the left. But as a general rule, I just think for a player that is relatively limited in terms of his ability to beat players whose movement can be questionable at times, I do think he's much better off on the right. That said, Campbell has shown himself to be really quite fantastic cutting in, I think, from the right onto his left with his vision. He's created a few chances this season, got a couple of assists, often, when he cuts in on his stronger foot. And he's someone who is probably benefiting from being able to come into the game from the wide position. Whereas if he was on the left, he'd be, forced to go wide a little bit more. I think what I would say is that when Alexis is back, I would probably keep the inverted wingers, playing Alexis on the left, cutting in on his right, and keeping Campbell on the right into his left. It's just with Theo on the wing, I just don't think it works out for him, especially in tight games where he isn't afforded the space. So I do think it's something that we should be loose with. We should change from time to time based on the personnel, based on how the game is. But at the weekend, I was definitely of the opinion that we should have switched it up, if only to get Walcott more into the game, because he was really struggling over on that side.
Okay, Clive. So inverted wingers, people think they can't put a good ball in. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, I look at things completely different, as always, right? So, so what we have with Campbell and Walcott really is two centre forwards playing wide. That's what they are when they receive the ball. So if you look at Campbell, he's slightly better at this, right? So Rick, you're an American, right? So you know what I mean by a post-up centre forward, right? He posts up really well, right? So he receives the ball back to goal. He knows how to buy a foul. When Theo plays wide, he does it very well. I think he's a much better offensive target on the right. I think he knows his runs more naturally because he's been there longer, and he offers us a running target. So I like him there. But when he receives the ball around the edge of the area, when you measure a player, you measure their psychology from defence to attack and attack to defence, right? So when he's in the defensive position, he immediately thinks, I'm a centre forward, I'm a winger, I've got to run myself away from here. I've got to dribble myself away from here. And that's where Campbell's better, because Campbell protects the ball more. He's more secure. He's not thinking about beating a man. He's thinking about running the ball away into less dangerous area or buying a foul. So from that angle, we are playing forwards in almost wide midfield positions. And because of that, I felt, especially against Liverpool, they had many second efforts. They were pressed out of the game. And those second effort transitions led to goals, right? Both the first two goals came from Walcott and Campbell not quite tidying the ball up. From an attacking point of view, Campbell he's almost like another Ozil on the right hand side. He gets his head up and he plays lovely way at pass, right? So he's not running beyond as much as he used to. He's quite liking these reverse passes in between the lines. And again, yesterday Theo was, really, since the City game, has really worked very hard to protect Monreal and to make sure we're a solid unit. but he's not making as many runs in behind. And if he is, our midfielders are not finding him early enough. So I think I like the inverted wingers. It's all to do with your starting position. It's not about what foot you are, it's where you start from. And maybe yesterday we were a little bit narrow than when we have got narrow in some games. I think Newcastle we were quite narrow. I think it's not the fact what foot you are, it's where you're starting from. If we can stretch the play, it doesn't matter. But if you do receive it in those wide areas, you can put in a dangerous ball. So I'm not against it. I think we get more shooting opportunities, and Theo versus City was a classic example, right? Gets the ball, 2 touches, bang, goal. He's not scoring that goal from the right-hand side, right? So pluses and minuses can make us narrow if we get our starting position wrong. But again, we're making do with many of our key players out, right? So it's working. It's working.
Okay. We've talked a little bit about Campbell already in that question, but we had 2 tweets about Campbell. One was from JASAFC. The other was from Sir A. Hussein 14. One asking about, are you hopeful that Campbell will get offered a new contract? And 2 has Campbell and Iwobi moving ahead of Walcott and Chamberlain in the pecking order? Callum, you want to talk about Campbell?
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's interesting because we know with Wenger that he quite often has his favourites, and for Campbell, he spent a lot of time clearly being out of favour. He was the one getting subbed off. He was the one making way when players came back from injury. But I think it was pretty pointed that at the weekend, Iwobi was the one brought on for Walcott, and Walcott came off, not Campbell. I think before that happened, I was pretty sure that Campbell would be withdrawn, because he often is. And Walcott clearly wasn't happy about coming off. So I think it'll be interesting when Alexis is back to see whether or not Campbell keeps his place and Walcott is withdrawn. And I think actually that Campbell will keep his place. I think he's gotten to the point now where he's so important for us and has been consistently good for so long now that Wenger has no choice really but to keep him in the team. In terms of any contract for him, I think it's imperative that we get him down for a longer deal. Even if he doesn't stay, long term, we could get a good amount of money for him. But I would like to keep him, and a lot of it is down to his attitude. It's not just his individual skill or technique. It's how he is. A couple of times it's looked like he has no future with us, and here he is now. At the weekend with Özil out, he was our most creative player probably, and the one we relied on the most to have a spark, and he always tracks back well and gets tackles in. So he's a really big player for us now, I think, and a great player to have in the squad. Very versatile. In terms of Iwobi, I think Iwobi will stop being on the bench, probably go back to being in the reserves when we get more bodies back. I think Walcott would have to underperform a lot more for a much longer period before he was behind Iwobi on the pecking order. But I do think that in terms of who keeps their place when Alexis back, I think Campbell, without question, is deservedly ahead of Walcott when you consider that. So Walcott has got a lot to do, I think, to earn his place back.
All right, Clive, what are your thoughts on Campbell and a little bit on Iwobi?
Yeah, Campbell's an interesting guy, right? So you got to think. Sometimes we forget. We just think to see these young kids. And he's 23. He's playing for Arsenal, but he's a young kid that we plucked from Costa Rica. Sent him out to Lorient, sent him to Villarreal, sent him to Olympiacos. Then brought him in. He's been here 4 years. Brought him back to London. So he's been to 3 different countries and done something in all of them. Still been an Arsenal player. He's assimilated to 3 different environments. He's come to Arsenal way down the pecking order. He's fought. And now he's in the first team and in many people's number 1 team. And I think, massive praise to him. Right? I think that's a huge achievement to do what he's done. Right? From a small country to come into the Premiership and do that. Right? So, and I think some of our players in our squad can look at what he's done and how he's grabbed his opportunity and the work he's put in, and maybe look at themselves and say, "Am I doing enough? Am I doing enough?" Right. So, Iwobi, he's well, the first thing, right, and my own little prejudices here. I just wish he'd pull his socks up, right? But I'm an old man. I'm an old man, right? And I just like to see him. I just like to see socks pulled up properly, not running around like some sort of geriatric. But when the ball's at his feet, he's not a geriatric. He can just burst you and then go straight past you. And he's got a real awareness of what's around him. And Wenger quoted, he's got great timing of pass. And in the period of the pitch he had yesterday, if you noticed it, you're watching him and you're thinking, okay, what's he going to do, young kid? But every time he popped it, it was at the right time, at the right weight, the right decision. Mm. And that makes you think, wow, you've got something going on there, mate. You know, I'm not sure what you are yet. I don't think you're going to be quick enough to play wide all the time. But centrally, he could be, he could be something. I know he plays centrally for under 21s. Yeah, he is a player. I don't know what he is yet, but he certainly knows how to play football. I just wanted to put his socks up. I don't think he's. I don't think he's going to be competing with those boys yet. The 140 grand Theo Walcott. That's not going to happen just yet. But we've seen him as an academy player coming through, and he's hit the level, right? And he hasn't been on loan. He just hit the level, and that's a very good sign. Maybe he will go on loan as the squad gets deeper again when people come back. And then maybe we're talking about Alex Iwobi in a year and a half's time, and it's a different conversation, So very encouraging, very encouraging.
Okay, yeah. As far as Campbell goes for me, he's impressed me more than I thought he would. Given the fact that we kept loaning him out, we were even looking at shipping him away, I think, over the summer. He's impressed the hell out of me, the way he's come on and improved. And I, too, am hopeful that he signs a contract. I think he's a valuable player. I don't know that he's, when we're fully fit, I don't think he makes a starting 11. I think he's just not quite that good. But he's a guy that you can depend on for, a dozen games throughout a season to come in and do a job. I think he's a very valuable player from that standpoint. I think that does it for questions. There was one question about upcoming game against Chelsea. Do you think El Nene will start? I really don't. I don't think he's been here long enough, and you don't want to throw him in there against even though they're struggling, this is still a strong Chelsea team. So I don't know that we'd put him in. But Callum, what are your thoughts on Chelsea coming up?
A must-win, really, given the two draws away from home look a hell of a lot better if we follow them up with a win against Chelsea. And it's a bit difficult to see what's going to happen because I know that they've improved slightly under Hiddink, but they are still down there. They are still, largely out of form. With Mourinho out of the picture, you probably have more confidence of Wenger being able to get one over on Hiddink, but I would love it if we could just turn them over or, win in a manner that, we're top of the table, they're bottom half. We should be able to beat them by a couple of goals with relative ease. But knowing how our games go against them, it's just difficult to see it going that way. So they'll be up for it. Hopefully we will too. So I don't know. I never feel confident against Chelsea, Mourinho or not. But I think if I was putting money on it, as a neutral, I would probably put it on a 2-0 win or something like that. Or, just we win, but I won't be confident going into it, put it that way. But I think we hopefully can do it.
Clive, what are your thoughts on Chelsea?
I'm confident. Right? I'm 100% confident we're going to win. And I did watch the Chelsea-Everton game the weekend, and I was watching Everton midfielders just run past Matic and Fabregas. Run past them and away from them. And we've got quicker midfielders than them. So, and we've got better running midfielders. So I just see Ramsey running all over them. And I'm really, really confident. I think we're going to have the 6-7 days rest for the first time in a while. We're going to get a couple of players back. If we play the team and not the badge, we'll win it comfortably.
Okay, good. I want to smash them. I just hate Chelsea. I just want to kick the crap out of them.
Well, that result could be that kind of turning point in the season that we thought we might get at Anfield, or if we'd nicked it against Stoke, you thought we'd get. If we can beat Chelsea and really do a number on them in a confident way, it will give us so much belief going forward, even if it's at home.
Yeah.
3-0, absolutely. 3-0 done. Trust me.
3-0. All right. I love it. I'd want to smash him. If we can get 6, I'll take 6. I don't care.
I would take a scrappy 1-0 with an own goal. I don't care, or a handball.
Yeah, with another boot to John Terry's face. That'd be great too.
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay, well, I think that'll wrap it up for us. Thanks for coming on, Callum.
Thank you, mate. Thank you for hosting. You were top notch.
Oh, that was terrible. I'm not used to hosting. Clive, thanks for coming on and bailing us out here.
You did a great job, and don't ask me to host.
I told him not to ask me, and look where I am. Anyway, that'll do it for us. We'll see. Actually, we have planned anyway. I don't know if they're actually going to happen, but some specials coming out during the week. I think James and Akil are doing some interviews with some people, and we might be releasing some more podcasts this week. Just follow us on Twitter. Follow us on YouTube. If you want everything, though, you can go to thegoonerramble.com, and you get not only the links to all of our, how you subscribe to the podcast, but there's also blogs out there as well. So don't be afraid to go to the website as well. And until then, we will see you next time. Thanks.
1, 2, 2, 2.